Good evening, everybody. Welcome along. This is Space Dave Live, episode number 25. My name is Dave. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, along with these fine people in our audience. Yep, here we go. Say hi to everyone. So a few familiar faces out there. Over the back there, we have Jess helping us out in our production assistant role tonight. And I wanted to mention a special guest we've got tonight, Casey. Say hi to everyone, Casey. Casey Hesp, you would have seen his name before on the show. He's been a big supporter of the show. And Casey decided to just pop up from Levin to come and be part of the show tonight. So there you go. All you people who think it's too much of an effort to drive from around town to come and see us, have a look at Casey. That's how it's done, people. You just get in the car. You go on a road trip. That's what it's all about. Awesome to see. So, very cool. So, let's have a look at our program and get stuck straight into things. So, program tonight, we're going to do the introduction, a few bits and pieces. We're going to start with our segment on The Truth is Out There tonight. It won't take too long, but we're going to do that first tonight. Then we will get stuck into the news, which will include a bit of stuff about launches, not too much on the rocket launches tonight. A bit of sort of update / gossip about the Artemis program to get people back to the moon, some news from around the solar system and planetary news, and I guess the big news for the last couple of weeks would have been that discovery about water vapour on an exoplanet. So we'll look forward to that. Now I'm just having a look at our comments. I was a bit distracted just a minute ago because I thought, oh no, our Facebook comments aren't working again, but it actually does seem like the chat is working tonight, so that's good news. So let's just have a quick look through here. Hi Lily, sorry I couldn't talk to you before, I was just a little bit tied up getting ready for the show. Just Gaming 6, Kalman, Lucky, I think, sorry about the pronunciation there, I did have it right previously. Alan, John, hi John, good to see you again. Poison Toad, Paul, and who we've got over here in Facebook land, Joseph, Lockie, is it? Sorry, Arfina, Ian and Niels. Welcome along, you guys. Thank you for joining in. Now, we're actually going to try something just very slightly different with the chat tonight because, as you know, I'm having a lot of trouble keeping up with the chat, and it's a constant embarrassment for me that when I go and look through the chat after the show, I've missed a lot of stuff that I really should have responded to. So we're just trying something a little bit different out in the audience. Mum/Steph is over there keeping an eye on the YouTube chat on her screen there. Now, let me just try this out. Hang on, is this working? I don't know if this is actually, it's not working like it's supposed to be. Oh no, here we go, there we go. So this is the screen that she is looking at, and what we're hoping to do in the future is actually have people out in the audience help us keep an eye on the chat so they can sort of prompt me and just sort of help interact with you guys a little bit better so I'm not struggling so much on my own. Hey Carsten, thank you for joining us as well. So we'll see how that goes tonight. Unfortunately, so far we can only do that part of it with the YouTube because it's a lot more difficult with the Facebook. Actually, if anyone knows how to do that, let me just get back to that because with YouTube, it's really easy to separate the live chat from the video stream. I don't know of any way to do it easily with Facebook. If anyone knows a way to do that, please let me know. I know that you have to apply for an access key and you have to do it programmatically and stuff. It's a real drama. If anyone knows an easier way of splitting the Facebook comments from the video, that would be awesome because as it stands, if I tried to do what I just did with the Facebook, then you get the Facebook video coming back and it creates a really ugly feedback loop. So anyway, that's all we need to say about that. If anyone can help me out, that would be awesome. Our competition tonight, let's talk about that. So here is the question for the competition tonight. Should New Zealand give money to NASA? It'll become a little bit clearer shortly why I'm asking that, but should we donate money to NASA to be part of their program, in particular to get back to the moon? And our prize tonight is this book, Eye on the Sky, The Fascination of Telescopes. So I've got a copy of it right here. It looks like this. It's a cool book about telescopes and stuff, and I'll be straight up with you. The reason that I'm giving this away as a prize is that I've got a whole bunch of them in the shop over there and they are not selling, so I need to offload them. So I'm giving away one of them as a prize tonight, but it's a good book, so just let us know if you think New Zealand should be participating in NASA's program or offering to help out with money. In other housekeeping news with the Space Centre, probably what do we need to talk about? Just the show schedule first of all. We are continuing with the fortnightly format just for now, but yeah, it's going to be probably, I would expect, in maybe another couple of months we might do this, and then we'll reevaluate what's happening. It's all about collecting data actually at the moment, just to see how well this one works, but we'll have an update for that shortly. Now, one other thing, Black Diamond and a couple of other people have asked me about the countdown video. Why do we have a 5-minute long countdown video before the show? The reason for that is that it actually takes a while to get the streams working, and we need to allow a little bit of time for things to go wrong. For example, tonight YouTube took almost 2 minutes to actually register the live stream, and sometimes things go wrong, and if we don't have a few minutes to correct it, then we're not live at 7 o'clock and people just abandon it and leave. Unfortunately, after the show, we can't really edit the videos. If we edit the videos, we lose all the live chat that went with it for the people who are watching the recorded version. Again, if anyone knows a way around that, let me know. But as far as I can see, we are kind of stuck with that. So I'm going to try and push it a little bit so we don't have a whole 5 minutes before the show, but at the moment we're kind of stuck with that. That's just about all we need to say, except of course to remind you that if you want to support the show, you can do so at Patreon. Or contact us if you want to find some other ways to help support us. So with that, let's get into our first topic tonight, which is the truth is out there. We haven't done this segment for a little while now, but of course this week was the big week. You know what I'm talking about? It was storming Area 51 that happened this week. So big build up, lots of anticipation, what's going to happen. So first of all, about a week out from the main event, a couple of guys decided that they would preempt everyone else, and they did actually manage to get over the border and into the Area 51, where they were promptly arrested and sent to jail. So probably not the best planning for their holiday in America. They were from Europe. Where were they from? I can't remember. Dutch were they? Thank you. It says it right there. So they got sentenced to 6 months in jail, but were actually due to be released just after a few days if they paid a fine. So that was the beginning of it. But when it actually came to the day for storming Area 51, did anyone watch it? Let us know in the chat if you watched any of the live streams or watched what was going on. I didn't really see any coverage of it in the mainstream media afterwards, but I did watch a couple of live streams, and here is a still from one of the streams that I watched, and that pretty much summed up everything that was happening. So there were two things that happened. There was an event further away from the actual Area 51 where I believe there was 1,000 or more people, but I don't know anything about what happened there. I was really concentrating on this one right at the perimeter there, and this was one of the streams I was watching. I watched a couple of live streams from there, and look, honestly, it was a festival of cringe. It was painful to watch at times. Really, it was a bunch of young guys that were really just all talking up their own YouTube channels, and most of the conversation was subscribe, send us money, we'll let you use the emojis and blah blah blah, and it was just it wasn't that comfortable to watch, but at times they were getting all hyped up. So all of these people standing around here, occasionally they'd be all like, right, ready to go, we're going to do the storming, who's going to go? And they're all pumping themselves up and getting ready to go, but of course nothing really happened, and it was all really rather embarrassing for them. A couple of other quick photos. That kind of summed up a bit of the mood a little bit as well. I thought that was quite a hard case. Apologies for not crediting these photos. Honestly, I tried my best to find out who took these photos, but I was not able to, so I'm just showing them to you anyway. They're all over the internet. A couple of other photos there. So yeah, that was pretty much it. In the end, basically, it was a non-event, much to the surprise of nobody. So that was the storming of the Area 51. So has anyone said anything in the chat spot? Let's just have a quick look here. So we've got a whole bunch of people commenting in here. It didn't happen, not happening. Okay, look, I've got to avoid doing this. I'll cut to you guys a bit later and ask about what's happening in the chat. So, yeah, that was all a little bit of fun anyway. So that was the Area 51 thing. Now, one other thing in the while we're talking about the truth is out there. This was a news story that came out. The US Navy has confirmed that these UFO videos are the real deal. We've seen these videos before. We've talked about them a fair bit and about how the Navy is actually trying to get to the bottom of these things. Is that video going to play? Probably not. Well, there you go. So it's not really that much of a story in itself, I don't think, because I don't think there was ever any question about whether the videos themselves were real. The question is, what are they? What are we looking at? And we are no closer to knowing that. So a lot has been made of the story that the Navy has admitted something, but I don't think they've really admitted anything that they hadn't already. So that's really all we wanted to say about UFOs and stuff like that. So let's start talking a little bit more about some serious space news. So let's get started with our rocket schedule, of course, our launch schedule. And before we start here, remember, can you name the rocket on the left there? So again, not a particularly difficult one. If you're a serious space fan, there's a good chance that you will know what particular rocket that is. If you're really serious, try and name the actual mission. But again, I'd be very surprised if anyone could name the actual mission just based on that photo. So with our launch schedule, the recent launches, there was a few there over the last few weeks, most of them out of China, weren't they? And we've already talked about most of them. It's probably worth mentioning that navigation satellite one. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this, Beidou, or something like that, the one on a couple of days ago. So that is part of the Chinese navigation constellation. So this is their version of GPS, their challenge, I guess, to the United States-owned GPS satellite system. So ultimately, they are looking at having 35 satellites as part of their system, and they are hoping to complete that next year in 2020. So they are claiming that this system will have a millimeter accuracy. That's with post-processing, but that's extremely impressive if true. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that one all pans out, but they are hoping to complete that next year. So I'm just trying to think of the other satellite navigation systems we've got. So we've got GPS, we've got the European Galileo system, the Russian system, and the Chinese one. Am I missing any? Someone tell me if there are any others out there. So it's no longer just the American GPS system out there, of course. Now this was China's 19th attempt at launching something to orbit this year, and 2 of them have failed, so that's a pretty good track record for the Chinese. I think they'd be pretty pleased with that. So scheduled launches coming up. We've got the Russian one that's due to launch tomorrow. That is the crew replacement for the International Space Station. We spoke about that in the last show, and we'll probably cover that next show. What else have we got there? There's a military one that they are launching, a couple of others that we spoke about last time. The Pegasus one on October 10th, that looks quite interesting. The Pegasus is a launch system from a plane. It's one of those ones where they drop the little rocket off a plane and then it goes up into the sky, and that is a science mission to study the ionosphere. SpaceX's the Starlink 1, L1, Starlink mission, that's a part of their internet access constellation. That is due to launch, I think, no earlier than October 17th, not necessarily on that date, but that's all getting very close. That's certainly moving along. No word on the Starship. We might get to that a little bit shortly because we're expecting some news from them soon. And Electron, Rocket Lab's Electron. Now, I was going to talk about this one, but I have actually decided not to because the only information I had is second-hand, and as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any official announcement from Rocket Lab. So I just felt a little uncomfortable with relaying the second-hand, unofficial information that I had. I would prefer to do this by the book and just wait until Rocket Lab actually makes an official announcement. So I think that's all we're going to talk about with the upcoming... Actually, no, sorry. No, I will show you a quick video. It's, while we're on the topic of Rocket Lab, I've got a short video about their new launch complex in the States. So hopefully we can go and have a quick look at that. So let me just play you this video. So we have talked about their new launch complex on the east coast of the United States, their Launch Complex 2. So here's just a quick introduction video about that.
My name is Sean DeMello, and I'm the Vice President of Launch at Rocket Lab. Today we installed the launch platform, a very significant milestone in our construction. This is the last major subsystem to be installed on the pad. Here on, we focus on integration and test of all our systems in preparation for launch.
The emplacement of the launch mount on Launch Complex 2 is a major milestone. It's a significant step in moving toward launching the Electron rockets out of Mars Wallops.
So after the launch mount is installed, we'll go in to activate the hydraulic systems, then we'll go into electrical activation, controls, and then we'll go into commodity flows to the launch site.
Government customers have access to rapid responsive launch right here at LC2. They're in home soil and have access to highly secure facilities through Virginia Space.
So we're very proud of our partnership between NASA, Virginia Space, and Rocket Lab as we usher in a brand new launch capability for the nation. I'm excited to see the daily accomplishments by Virginia Space and Rocket Lab here at Mars as we establish the capability for launching Nano-class launch vehicles in support of NASA and the nation.
The Mars team and the Virginia Space team have been great. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and we look forward to getting this pad ready for launch.
It's exciting to be part of the LC2 team, partnered with Virginia Space and NASA. We're setting records here in developing this launch site, and we are ready to demonstrate the rapid launch capability support for the United States.
This is an incredibly proud day for the company, a big milestone for us as we start activating our second pad to go to orbit.
It is so close you can almost hear the roar of the rocket and see the smoke and flame as that thing is lifting off. So early 2020, we expect to see the Electron flying out of here.
Awesome stuff. Love it to bits. So really exciting, good on you Rocket Lab, it's just going so well. It's actually quite remarkable the progress they've made. I believe they think it's going to be the speediest construction of a launch facility anywhere. So hopefully everything continues on that same path, good stuff. So that's what's happening with Rocket Lab. Now if we just, before we finish up with our launch schedule, what was that rocket up there? Now, did anyone get it? Hang on a sec. We need to try our system. We need to test everything out. What have we got?
Okay, Space Cadet 35 says Saturn 1B, Apollo Soyuz mission 1975.
That is a very good effort there. So indeed, it is a Saturn 1B. The actual mission, you were close, but it was the Skylab, part of the Skylab 4. So I think that was actually the third crew to go to Skylab. Someone correct me if I've got that wrong, but very close. It was only what the Soyuz mission that you were talking about was 75, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, right. So yeah, so good effort. Well done. So that is our launch schedule. Just a quick reminder of our competition before we get into it. Should New Zealand give money to NASA? To enter, write your answer starting with the word comp. I didn't mention that before, but that's really important. You start with the word comp so we know it is a competition entry. So excuse me. So, right, let's carry on with some news. Now, I just wanted to make a quick mention of the Indian Vikram lander. Of course, we talked about that on the last show, the failed attempt to land on the moon. All I'm going to say is that it is still assumed to be dead. There's no real progress there. They tried to get some photos of the crash site, but as far as I'm aware, we don't really have any decent photos of the crash site. And now it must now be all over, because once it goes into the lunar night, this lander is not actually designed to last the cold of the lunar night. So once it gets dark there, it is definitely all over for that lander. So let's keep moving on. So the next story is related to our competition tonight, and that is that the Australian government has pledged $150 million to help out with the NASA's Artemis program. So that's what the competition was all about. I'm just asking, should we be doing the same thing? So yeah, Aussies have given $150. That's nice of them, isn't it? What a nice friendly thing to do. Here's $150 million to help with your project. So that really gets, so it's what they've signed a joint statement of intent. So Australia is pledging to commit resources in the form of robotics, automation and remote asset management, especially in mining, which of course is something that Australia has some expertise in, and communication systems. So Australia and NASA of course have history with cooperating with each other with the communication systems, I guess most famously with the Parkes observatory during the Apollo landing. So if you haven't seen the movie The Dish, you should definitely go and see that movie, all about that. So that's what's going on here. The Australians decided that they wanted to be part of that. The links for all of these things of course are in the show notes if you want to go and read more about that. So what's everyone saying about oh, hang on, no, I better not interrupt these guys. They're all busy at the moment. But we'll check in with the competition. Guys, we want to talk about the competition and see what everyone's saying. So, right, so that was that one. We'll just go on a little bit more about what is happening with NASA and the Artemis program. So NASA has joined the last 5 sections for the SLS, or Space Launch System. There you can see it right there. So this is more progress on getting ready to head back towards the moon. Go and read all about that one if you want to. I just need to quickly whiz through a few of these. They are testing the orbit. So NASA is going to be sending a CubeSat, or a very small satellite, into the same orbit that they want the Gateway to be in. So that little version of a space station that will be orbiting around the moon to help people get to the moon. It's a bit of an unusual orbit around the moon, and they actually want to test to make sure they can get a stable orbit there. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they're approaching this, but I know getting an orbit around the moon is not actually that easy. It's not like just getting an orbit around the Earth, because the density of different parts of the moon vary a lot. So it's a lot harder to get a stable orbit around the moon. So that's what they're doing. They are going to test out that orbit, but whether or not they even get the whole Gateway up and running is sort of still a little bit up in the air. In fact, let's talk about that a little bit, because a few actually, NASA officials have been sort of sowing some seeds of doubt as to whether they will actually be getting to the moon by 2024. So during a hearing of the Space Subcommittee, that's the Congress subcommittee in the States, Ken Bowersox, NASA's acting associate administrator for human exploration and operations, said in regard to that 2024 deadline for getting people on the moon, "I wouldn't bet my oldest child's upcoming birthday present or anything like that." So he is less than confident that they are actually going to be getting there. Now, as far as I'm aware, that's kind of the first time I recall hearing NASA officials coming out on the record and saying that they are not sure that we're actually going to get there. Until now, they've all been quite bullish, but a few others have actually been sort of hinting at the same sort of thing. So, in fact, now, if we go and have a look at Ars Technica, Eric Berger, who I've talked about before, one of the reporters there, he's got an interesting article here, link in the show notes if you want to go and read it, saying that some NASA contractors are trying to kill that lunar gateway. In particular, I suspect we're really talking about Boeing here, and he does mention Boeing here, because Boeing is, of course, one of the big contractors for NASA, but Boeing is, as far as I'm aware, is not particularly involved in the Gateway project as it stands right now. But Boeing is the main contractor for the upper stage, the exploration stage for NASA's SLS system, and they would prefer that money was spent on that rather than the Gateway. So I think we're going to see a little bit more of this, a little bit of lobbying from companies that are worried that they're missing out on their slice of the pie. So, yeah, there's going to be a bit of bickering and carrying on, I think, yet before this is all over. So I guess still in the same vein, here's an article from The Verge about Bigelow. So we've talked about this as well. Bigelow is a company that makes these awesome inflatable habitats. And I've said before that these guys will want to be part of the Gateway because what they're doing is really ideally suited. Now, if you have a look in this article, we'll just scroll down a little bit, and they've got some wonderful photos here of the mock-ups that they've got. So these are mock-ups of the inside of their inflatable habitats. Isn't that cool? Some really awesome stuff in here. One of these modules is about half of the space, the interior space of the entire space station. So they're just fantastic looking modules, but as they stand, these particular ones, this is a B330, isn't it? They're not really in line with the Gateway as it stands at the moment. The Gateway is calling for something much smaller than this, but here's Robert Bigelow here, and he's really trying to make the case that they should be part of the Gateway, if not in the first version, then certainly at some stage. So there you go. Is that a stormtrooper? I didn't see that before. There's a stormtrooper outside it, isn't it? What a hard case. So anyway, I'm pretty sure that's the B33. It'll say here somewhere. I think that is. I'm pretty sure that's the B330. So it's an impressive looking beast. I would love to see one of them in space. So it's quite a good article here. It's, sort of an introductory level article about how Bigelow's plans are unfolding and everything that they want to do. So it'll be interesting to see whether they get to be part of the gateway. I doubt whether it will be in the initial stages, but at some stage I'd be very surprised if they weren't somehow involved in what's going on up there. So I think that was all we wanted to say about that. We probably wanted to talk a little bit about what is happening with SpaceX. So a couple of things here. So first of all, I should mention the presentation that we keep talking about. Elon Musk is due to make a big presentation about Starship, and we're just all on the edge of our seat about that one. That will be, when is it? I've got it in my notes here somewhere, September 28th, so it's a few days away. He's going to be making that presentation in Boca Chica, Texas. Now, so we'll get back to that one after he's done it. But speaking of Boca Chica, Texas, I don't know how much most of you guys know about what's going on there, but it's a little wee village in southern Texas where SpaceX has set up their new, basically like a rocket factory, pretty much out in the open, with a tiny little village next door to it. And the whole thing seems to have been quite dodgy from the outset, really. Obviously, they don't have the same kind of resource consent applications and everything that we do in New Zealand, because it seems like if you're in the States and you want to build a rocket factory, well, you just go and plonk it down anywhere you like. And if there's some people, you know, in a house just down the road, well, fine, they'll get used to it. But that's it's not really unfolding that well. Look, what's happening? There's an article on Business Insider here, and there's also a really good piece on CBS. Now, I'll put the link for that in the show notes. It's on YouTube, so it's a video on the CBS morning show that they did about what is happening in Boca Chica, and I recommend that you do go and have a look at that video. It's just a few minutes long, but it's quite informative. So, look, if we have a look at down here, I think we've got a couple of photos here. Well, that kind of shows what's happening, doesn't it really? We've got a house there, and there's a rocket being built just over the road. It's bizarre. In the CBS video, they show that they're bringing one of these rockets around this person's house into the facility, and it's like over the top of the plants in their garden as it's going into the house. It's absolutely insane. Now, I think just down here there's a map, so you can see that the launch site and everything over here, some facilities here, and the tiny wee little village, just a little wee road just down here. So it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy. But anyway, the bottom line is I think there's about 20 people or so living there. Some of them are really stoked about what's happening, and they've made a bit of a name for themselves online, taking photos and becoming part of the whole thing. But at least one person is very unhappy about it, and I really felt for that person. So I mean, it certainly would be a little bit upsetting if you are not into any of this stuff and you suddenly find a rocket launch facilities. They're not just building them, they're testing them. And of course, remember what happened with the Starhopper. It set fire to 100 acres or something, didn't it? So you'd be a little bit concerned, wouldn't you, with this launching right next door to you? What a crazy situation. So anyway, as I say, I do recommend going and watching that video. And so, look, what's happened, one of the points here is that the residents of Boca Chica have all been sent a letter offering to buy their properties for 3 times the market value. So I would say that SpaceX is obviously seeing some potential problems here and thinking, well, look, we've got enough money to buy the houses in this little village, let's just buy them all out and be done with it. But at least one person, and I suspect more than one, is saying no thank you very much. So the letter said that here's the offer, it expires in 2 weeks and it's non-negotiable. But of course everything is negotiable, so it will be very interesting to see what happens after this. So certainly something to keep an eye on. Was there anything else I wanted to say about that? No, not much, except this is sort of unrelated, but still SpaceX. It's just this little video that they put out on Twitter. Let's see if I can full screen that. It's just a little montage video of all the a bunch of tests that they did on their Super Draco thing that we've covered before on the show, but it's just quite a neat video with a whole bunch of their tests all back to back. There's some really awesome shots in there. So this is the Crew Dragon capsule, of course, that we're really talking about here, where they're testing their launch abort system. So the link's in the show notes if you want to go and watch the whole video there. Or one more thing about SpaceX, actually. Let me just get rid of that one. Now, this goes back to This guy here, Yasuka Maezawa, I think I've got that right. This is the guy who has booked a flight on a SpaceX mission to go around the moon. He's the guy that wanted to take an artist or two with him, and so that was really exciting. But the last time I reported on this, it was that he had put out a tweet saying, I'm broke, I've got no money. So that didn't really bode very well. However, he has just cashed up a little bit. Let me make sure I've got this right. He has sold $2.3 billion stake in his company to Yahoo Japan so that he can focus on this particular mission. Is there anything more down there that we needed to say? Probably not, but maybe that mission is actually back on. So at this stage, it certainly does look like it is. So yeah, really interesting. Right, now before we move on to anything else, have we got anything out there on the YouTube chat that we need to talk about?
Yes.
Yes, okay. What have we got?
First of all, please say hello to Black Diamond, who sent a hi mum to me.
Okay, thanks for that, Black Diamond.
3 questions from Lily.
Yes.
But I wonder, they're all about stuff you might want to talk about another day.
Okay then.
Also, but the important one is, we've been asked on a Facebook feed, is it possible to date stamp each edition of the programme?
To date stamp it.
So that when people are looking for it, they can find the particular one they want to look at.
Okay then, thank you for that. I will make a note of that. So that's a good point. Yeah, because on YouTube it just says approximately how long ago. Yeah, okay, thank you very much for that. We will get onto that one. So nothing from you, Jess, over there? We're happy over there? Cool, let's carry on then. How's our time going? It's past. Oh, I wonder if we're going to get through all of this stuff. Righto, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit of stuff about China and Russia. So first thing is that China and Russia have made an agreement to cooperate on lunar missions. So this is a bit of a political thing. There's not much to report on it yet, other than that they have signed an agreement, and I mean you can see some of the stuff there. Go and read about it in the show notes if you want to. But it is interesting, and I mean I'm always a fan of countries working with each other in space. So it makes sense for many reasons. I think the one sad thing about all of this is it just reminds me how the relationship between Russia and America has really just all gone belly up, really, and it's such a shame after all the good work that was done from the Apollo-Soyuz mission that we were talking about before, the first time that they really cooperated in space, through to the International Space Station, and it's all gone so well for them working together. Why can't they keep working together? It's the politicians. I mean, the people in the space programs have no problem working with each other. But anyway, so they are looking at working much more closely together, and you can see there that they are talking about making some joint data centers and things like that. Now, still with Russia, this is a bit of a depressing story as well, but Vladimir Putin has warned of an arms race in space. This is a thing I've been going on a bit about recently, haven't I? And we should all be worried. Well, we are worried, aren't we? I'm certainly worried about it, as you very well know. I don't like the trend that's been happening. Over the last year or so, I've especially been getting this nagging, growing feeling that it's, there was the Indians, what they did with blowing up their satellite and all their posturing. There's the whole Space Force thing, of course. It's just there are more and more signs that the French are doing something, aren't they, with their anti-satellite technology. So we are looking at more of an arms race out in space, and you're really getting this feeling that other countries are looking at each other and thinking, well, if they're allowed to do that, why aren't we? And of course the general public just don't even realize that it's happening for the most part. So I want to keep it out there. I don't like talking about it, but I think it is something that we need to be aware of because it's happening without people being aware enough about it. Still with the Russians, this is back up on the space station now. Do you recall when they got that leak in the space station? Yeah, so this is quite an interesting one. So basically what's happened here is that Russia said that they know what's going on, but they're going to keep it a secret. In fact, the head of Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, Dmitry Rogozin, I think is how you pronounce it, has said, "We took all the samples. What happened is clear to us, but we won't tell you anything." It's a quote, that's what he said. So, wow. Now, technically speaking, the leak did actually happen on a Soyuz spacecraft that was docked to the space station. So, it's a little bit hard, isn't it? Like, NASA is not that happy about it. I know Jim Bridenstine from NASA has said that he's not happy. He's going to talk to them personally because he feels like he should know what's going on. But it's not exactly clear whether Russia is under any obligation to share what happened, because it was in their spacecraft, but it was docked to the space station. And technically speaking, when something docks to the space station, it is then referred to as part of the space station until it undocks. So, yeah, I would be inclined to think that they probably should be sharing what's going on, but the speculation seems to be centering around the idea that it was a mistake by one of the cosmonauts, and I've heard rumours that there were drill marks near the hole. So whether someone has just sort of got a bit loose with a drill and accidentally drilled a hole in the side of their spaceship, not something you really want to be doing, but it looks like we'll never know. So there you go, Russia is keeping that a secret. Okay, so there was one thing I wanted to mention here from Germany, in fact. So this was just a quick sad thing. This gentleman, I should have Carsten here to help me with my pronunciation. Sigmund Jähn, maybe I've got that right, was Germany's first cosmonaut, and he has recently passed away. So very sad to hear that. There's quite an interesting history behind all of this. This is sort of right back in the days where Russia and America, I guess, were both looking at branching out and involving other countries in their space programs. So America really first started doing it with their shuttle program, didn't they? Other than the Soyuz Apollo mission, I don't think they had anyone else involved in their space program, but they started getting astronauts from other countries with the space shuttle. Russia was a little bit ahead of the game, and we're looking to build alliances with other countries by inviting these astronauts on board. So a sad day for the Germans, and I thought this was quite a nice quote from this guy. Only when I saw the Earth from space in all its ineffable beauty and fragility did I realize that humankind's most urgent task is to cherish and preserve it for future generations. Nicely said, Sigmund. And quite a common sentiment, I think, from astronauts. Right, so that was that. Now let's head back out into space with a paper that was recently published in Nature with the enthralling title, Oscillations of the Baseline of Solar Magnetic Field and Solar Radiance on a Millennial Timescale. What are they talking about? What they're talking about is what's happening with the sun and how it's likely to affect Earth. So basically the radiation flux, I suppose you could say, from the sun, how much is going to be hitting the Earth. Now, this was actually very well paraphrased by a user on Reddit, u/9burgundy. So I'll just actually quote this user who summarized all of this. Due to the ways that the inner layers of the sun rotate, as well as the way that the sun wobbles around an axis, the amount of solar radiation which the Earth receives is supposed to be slightly less for the next couple of 100 years. After this point, the amount will start going back up, meaning that temperatures on Earth will increase by around 2.5 degrees within the next 6 centuries. Essentially what they're saying is that the radiation from the sun will be lower in the years ahead, which would theoretically actually help to reduce the temperature on Earth, but then will go back up after that. So my understanding of this is that the amount that they are talking about would not have any significant effect on climate change here on Earth, but would have some perhaps measurable effect. I'm not really sure about that. But the thing that really gets me about this is that they are expecting a reduction in sunspots and flare activity, and that's gutting for me, because the sun goes through the cycle of 11 years. And at its peak, at solar maximum, you're seeing a lot of sunspot activity and a lot of solar flares and things like that. At solar minimum, which is around about where we are now, you're really not seeing anything at all. Now, I love getting outside. Actually, you can see it in the background. See over there, that is a solar telescope. I'm trying to do it. can't get it. That one there, that is a solar telescope for looking at the sun. And we love getting that out here and showing the sun to people as they come around. But the sun's been very quiet, so it just kind of looks like just a disk, really. There's not a lot going on, but we're hoping in the years to come we're going to be seeing a lot more solar activity. But according to this study, we're not going to see so much. So I hope we do, because it's awesome. It's really fantastic. So seeing sunspots is really cool. You can actually see them just through one of these, actually, a solar filter that you can hold up and look at the sun. You can actually see big solar sunspots through them. With the solar flares, you actually really need to have a proper solar telescope to be able to see that. So that's what's happening with the sun. We've got a few other things to talk about around the solar system. This is another study, one related to Venus. Now, according to this study, Venus was potentially habitable until a mysterious event. So the long and the short of this story is our understanding of Venus is that it probably did have oceans, liquid water on the surface a long time ago, but we're not exactly really sure what unfolded and why Venus is so dry now. There are plenty of theories and hypotheses about it, but we're not 100% sure about exactly what happened. Now, what these guys have done is that they've done a bunch of simulations based on everything we know about the solar system and about Venus, and what they found is that Venus really should have been able to maintain a stable climate, able to support liquid water on the surface for a very long time, up until less than 1 billion years ago, at which point it appears that something must have happened quite dramatically and quite quickly to the planet to have changed it into what we see now, which is effectively the results of a runaway greenhouse effect. Venus has lost all its water into space, we assume. It's certainly very dry now. But so something must have happened, and you can go read the article. It's quite an interesting article. There's a fair bit of information about it, but it is all speculation and based on simulations rather than actual observations. So, simulations based on observations, I guess. But as I keep saying, we should be studying Venus more. I know that Mars is the trendy planet to be studying, but I would really love to see us learning more and more about what is happening on Venus. But speaking of Mars, let's move out there. So this is the InSight lander that landed in November 2018, didn't it? So this has discovered some mysterious magnetic pulses around Mars. So that's quite an interesting thing. So what the InSight, this lander, it's not a rover, it's just a lander. So it's been studying attempting to study the internal temperature of Mars, but it also studies Mars's magnetic field, which is quite different to Earth. We think that Mars used to have a much stronger magnetic field, but it has a very weak magnetic field now, which is part of the reason why it's lost so much of its atmosphere over the years. So what they've discovered recently is that the magnetic field is fluctuating, which is very odd. Even more so, it is fluctuating daily. So there are some ideas about exactly why that's happening. I think they think that it's lining up with the tail, the magnetic tail that you get from a planet, so on the other side of the sun. So it gets a little bit complex, but you can read all about it here. And they've also discovered that the crust of Mars is more magnetic than they expected. So what they're suggesting is that is a leftover from when the whole planet had a much stronger magnetic field like Earth's, and so that would have to some extent magnetized the crust, and what we are seeing is the leftover of that. So it's quite fascinating, some really good results coming from this lander. Even though they've had their trouble with that probe to measure the temperature, they are still getting some really good results. This is a really interesting result, and I think that will keep scientists busy for quite a long time, that one. At this stage, it's still a mystery about exactly what's going on, but we've got some really good data coming out of there. Still with Mars, the Mars 2020 that we like to check in on from time to time to see what's going on is doing a balancing thing at the moment. So this is intriguing. What they're doing here is it's like balancing the wheels on your car. So what they're doing is that they need to find the exact center of gravity, or they need to make sure it's in a certain place. So what they're doing, it's just like when you get your wheels balanced on your car, they spin it around and around and see which way it's wobbling, and they just put little wee weights on, just like you do around the rim on your car. So what they've done is that they've just found exactly where it is, and they just put little wee weights around it, and now it's all nicely balanced. So one more step closer to being ready for launch. And of course, remember, you can send your name to Mars. Now, the deadline is fast approaching. It's the end of this month. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to get online. The link's in the show notes so that you can send your name to Mars. What they do is they stencil it into a tiny wee little chip and send it off to Mars. At least that's the idea. So as it happens, we've already got our name on Mars here. Everyone in our family sent our names off with the InSight, actually, the one that we were just looking at. My name's in that InSight lander, and so the people in our family. Here's Jess's one out there. So it's your one, Jess, the little thing that you get, it's a bit hard to see there, isn't it? That your boarding pass, they call it, that tells you all about how your name is on the way to Mars. And I realised that I hadn't actually done my one for Mars 2020 yet. So I went online this afternoon and did that, filled out the form and submitted it, and got this. Denied! What? Hey, what's this about? You are currently on the no-fly list. What's that about? Do I look like some kind of interplanetary terrorist or something? Too much speeding. Look, I don't know what that's all about. I was gutted. So anyway, it says if you feel like this is an error, please let us know. So I did. I certainly let them know about that. Hopefully, I don't expect to hear straight back, but hopefully I will be able to get on there and get my name, but there's not actually that long to go now. So anyway, you guys try and get on there and let me know how you get on, because I'd be interested to know if anyone else is getting that same kind of problem. Family-friendly words only, please. The only words I put in was my name, and I think my name is family-friendly. So yeah, pretty upset about that one, to be honest. So that is Mars. I think that's all we're saying about Mars, but we're going to move out to Jupiter. Have a look at this photo. So I was amazed when I very first saw this. So this is a photo, we've actually talked about this kind of image before. This is a new one from the Juno mission. And what you're seeing there, that hole, it's nothing to be alarmed about, don't worry. It's not imploding or sucking itself in or anything. That is an eclipse, basically. So it's a shadow of one of the moons. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, what on earth? What moon would make a shadow that size? I've never seen anything like it, because normally, it's not uncommon to see these, but they're normally quite small. So I wanted to point this out because this photo is being shared around a lot. That's actually not the whole of Jupiter. What you're seeing there is a fisheye view, and actually, once you have a look at the rest of it, you see that's not the whole planet. That's just a fisheye view of what it would look like looking towards that part of it. So don't be fooled by that. The shadow is not actually that big. And it is, someone tell me in the chat, which moon do you think made that shadow? So if you want to see more about these images, the link is in the show notes to the Juno Cam. And if you go down here and you click on the processing gallery, this is actually open to the public. They've got a thing where you can go there and you can download raw images from the Juno Cam, and then you can submit them back. You can process them to bring out details and do all sorts of things, to do whatever you like to it, and then you can submit them back and they may feature them on the website. So there's a bunch of really cool images there that people have done, and it's worth having a look through there. You can see some of the photos there. So that is really neat. Now, so that was Juno. So that's everything we wanted to talk about in the solar system. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about in the chat? Okay, so we're happy with that. Did anyone, I suppose a little bit soon, but did any, now I don't know how to pronounce your name. How would you guys pronounce that name? Lockable? I'm sorry about that, but anyway, you are dead right, it is Io. Did anyone else get that? The moon Io, that a lot of people call Lo, but it is in fact Io. Luke, you were mentioning that you showed you and your wife a solar flare. It's impressive, isn't it? It is really cool seeing a solar flare with your own eyes. Right, so let's carry on, because we are 7:45 and I wanted to talk about some things outside. Actually, no, sorry, this one is still inside our solar system, but it has an interstellar component. So this, you may have heard about this one. A newly discovered comet is likely an interstellar visitor. Now, I don't think I can full screen that, can I? No, it's a bit hard to see that, sorry. But what you're looking at there in that animation is across the middle, that's sort of the plane of our solar system where the sun and all the main planets are, and that line coming in from above is this, what we assume is a comet that is passing through our solar system, which would make it the second confirmed object, or more or less confirmed, close enough, to pass through our solar system from outside our solar system that we have identified. Now, the article that I've linked to in the show notes says that it has yet to be confirmed. However, just today, JPL did announce that they have confirmed it. So that's pretty exciting. I think they've got actual photo? Oh, and they didn't on this page, sorry about that, but there is a photo of it. It just looks like a very small fuzzy object, which is how most comets look through a telescope. You don't normally see comets with their tails really. It's quite hard. It's more common at least to see a comet with just a sort of a bit of a fuzzy area around it. So that was nice, a visitor from outside of our solar system. Now let's move right out of our solar system to what I think is probably the biggest astronomy news within the last couple of weeks. Water detected on a potentially habitable planet. What a cool story this is. So let's just spend a minute talking about this one. Now first of all, actually, let's just clarify one thing. This is potentially habitable. Yep, I'd go along with that. But really the story is that the water vapor has been detected on a planet which is in the habitable zone of its solar system. So really we are talking about that distance or range of distances from the star that you're orbiting, that liquid water could exist if the surface of the planet was solid, was rocky. So if you had an Earth-like planet, liquid water could exist on there with all the right conditions, of course, the right temperature and everything. So whether this planet is Earth-like or not is a whole different question, and a lot of news outlets have been talking about this as a habitable planet. That is actually unlikely to be the case. From everything I've seen, it's unlikely that this planet would be habitable for life as we know it. But anyway, the planet itself is orbiting a small, fairly cool red dwarf planet about 110 light years away in the constellation of Leo. So it is in the habitable zone, but that doesn't necessarily make it a habitable planet. So if they do manage to confirm that they've got water vapor here, it's unconfirmed, so that's another good point here. So it would be the only exoplanet known to have both water in its atmosphere and temperature that could sustain liquid water on a rocky surface. The planet itself was discovered by the Kepler Space Telescope back in 2015. The planet has about 8 times the mass of Earth. So that's a big point, isn't it? 8 times the mass of Earth. So straight away, that's quite different to our planet. So the way they did the study was that they were using the transit method. So, you know, when you've got a star here, and if everything's lined up just right, the planet will go in front of the star. And when that happens, you can analyze the light from the star passing through the atmosphere of that planet. And using spectroscopy, which is a method of splitting up the light into its different colors, just like putting it through a prism basically, you can learn a lot about where that light has been. So if that light from the star passes through the atmosphere, some wavelengths of that light will be absorbed by chemical elements in the atmosphere of that planet, and then when that light gets to us and we break it into all its spectrum, all the different colors, we can see bits of it are missing. So those bits will have been absorbed by the atmosphere of that planet. So we can tell some of the chemical elements that are in the atmosphere. So what this was based on Hubble data. So what they found is that this atmosphere appears to contain hydrogen, helium, and water vapor. That's what they've been able to detect. They also think that there were a couple of other elements. I better refer to my notes for this. I think it was methane and nitrogen. Yep, methane and nitrogen they think might be there as well, but that's sort of beyond the limits of our observing capabilities right now. So that, I think, is really exciting news that they've been able to detect water vapor in another planet. Obviously, that's important when you're looking for signs of life and that sort of thing. But also, I believe this is the smallest, yeah, here it is, the smallest planet where atmospheric features have been detected. And that in itself is really good news. That's exciting stuff that we're getting, we're narrowing it down. We're able to detect what's going on in atmospheres of smaller and smaller planets. And of course, where all of this is leading is that we are looking for biomarkers or biosignatures. If we can detect something in the atmosphere of these planets that is a sign of life, that's the holy grail, isn't it? That's what we're all looking for. So there would be a bunch of options there. So for example, well, methane actually would be one, of course. That's a potential biomarker, not a slam dunk. Of course, pollutants would be a big thing. If you found something in the atmosphere of a planet that does not occur naturally, then that's going to be a dead giveaway that it's likely that some form of alien life is making it. And I suspect that will eventually be our first, let's say, indirect evidence of alien life. I think that's where we will come across our first real shot at trying to find ET, will be by analysing the atmosphere of other planets. And when I see this kind of news story, that's what actually excites me. It's really cool seeing water and all the other things that we're talking about, but we're getting closer and closer to potentially actually being able to see the side effects of life on another planet. Whoa, it's exciting stuff. It's really cool. I'm hoping it happens in my lifetime. I think we've got a shot with James Webb Telescope and other things happening. I think we've got a shot. I think there's an actual chance that within the next few decades we will see something like this. But maybe I'm just being optimistic. Other people will point me at the Fermi paradox and say, no, you're daydreaming, Dave. Anyway, so the planet that we were talking about is actually, I think it's not likely to be particularly Earth-like. It's more likely to be a kind of Neptune-like planet, I think, if I had to put money on it. So there you go. That was a little bit about that. I think it's exciting news. It was a great story, and nice to see that it got a lot of mainstream news coverage. Now, while we're just on the... Oh, sorry. Yep, let's go out. Yes, you can indeed.
Because there is a comment from, somebody, from Lookable, saying habitable means you have to get there to inhabit it. Would that be right, that habitable means we've got to be able to get there?
Okay, I get. Well, that is one interpretation, I guess, and I guess that there's not really any. Look, put it this way: my interpretation of habitable would mean that if we were there, we could survive. Or actually, throwing it out a little bit wider, I would actually go a little bit looser and say that it could be habitable for some form of life. And I'm picking that's probably the way most astronomers would go with that. I think when most astronomers talk about habitable, they're probably being a little bit generous and a little bit loose. In fact, I would even go so far as to say you might call it habitable with spacesuits even. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Thank you for that one. Certainly in the context of this one, I think they're using the definition of habitable simply meaning that it would have the right conditions where liquid water could exist on a solid surface. So that's quite a loose definition of habitable, isn't it? Because in that case, it could be bathed in deadly radiation, which really does kill the habitable side of it. So I think that definition is actually too loose. So I'd be going somewhere in between, really, I think. But thank you for that one. That's an interesting discussion topic, that one. Was that all? Any of you guys wanted to say anything else out there? Well, because we're getting near the end of our time here. Did anyone else want to comment on anything that's happening before we start thinking about wrapping things up?
Somebody else got a no-fly thing.
Oh.
Dominic O'Donnell got the same no-fly list just now.
Just now. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul Reed, I got it.
And Paul did as well?
And Paul Reed, yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, look, thank you for that feedback, guys. That makes me feel a little bit less discriminated against. And so hopefully, I can tell you what, would you guys, hopefully you put the feedback thing in as well. So it would be good if we got a few people to post that. I would hate to think that their chip is full. I don't think it would be. No, they would have said so if it was full, wouldn't they? Surely. And I'm sure they had enough room to fit millions on there. So anyway, that is really good feedback from you guys. Thank you for that. Right, we've got a couple of minutes to go, so let's have a quick reminder of our competition, actually, because we need to wrap that up very shortly. So our competition was, should New Zealand give money to NASA in the same way that Australia has done? To enter, write your note in there. Now, did anyone want to summarise what some of the competition entries were or anything? Was anyone keeping an eye on that? Not
a lot of no's.
A lot of no's.
Yeah, some saying if we get something out of it, it would be good. Somebody else suggesting since they're happy to share their intellectual property with us, we should be willing to give them some money.
That is an interesting point. That is a really good point, actually, because NASA does make all of their stuff freely available. So, yeah, nice point. Thank you for that one. But I think the consensus is still no, is it? You can pay for it yourself. We'll just take the goodies, thanks. Now, look, let me just quickly whiz through a couple of Other quick ones here, because I think we've got time to at least give them a quick mention. This was another story from around our galaxy, but outside of our solar system. The most massive neutron star ever detected. Now, this is a fascinating one. If you're into astrophysics, how stars work and things like that, neutron stars and whatnot. So the really interesting thing about this one is that this neutron star appears to be right on the edge of how massive a neutron star can get before it collapses into a black hole. So really interesting stuff if you're into this kind of thing. Yes, we don't have time to talk about it anymore tonight, but go and read the article about it. This talks about how they detected its mass. And some of the implications there. So this really goes a long way to helping us confirm our understanding of a lot of how this kind of stuff works. I guess in particular relativity and Einstein's theory about exactly what happens when you get to a certain mass and at what point excuse me, something would no longer be able to sustain itself and would collapse into a black hole. So, I mean, if we found something much more massive than this, that would throw our understanding of general relativity into doubt, because it shouldn't be able to be much more massive than this without collapsing into a black hole. So I really enjoyed that article. Go and have a look at it. And what else did we have? Let's have a quick look here. Oh, this is something completely unrelated. Excuse me. If you're looking for a job in space, here's a really interesting website. It's kind of like a seek.co.nz for the space industry. So this was a website created by a company called Space Angels, which is an investment company from New York. And they have got listed almost 3,000 jobs in the space industry. So if you're interested, have they got Rocket Lab in there? I don't see it there. They should have, shouldn't they? But if you come here and if you want to hire someone to work in your rocket company, you click on there. But if you are in the more likely position of wanting to get a job, you just click on here and they've got a whole bunch of jobs listed. You can see that they've got some little thumbnails about which organization, and you can just go there and just search through all the jobs. And it's actually really interesting to just go through and see what jobs are available in the space sector. Now, I know I get asked this all the time. What do I have to do to get involved in space? How would I get a job in space? What kind of jobs are there? Go and have a look at this website, because that really just lays it all out for you. What a great website. What a great idea. Love it. Right, a couple more quick things to wrap up here before we get into our competition. Was it a couple or just one? Fake news. We haven't done that for a little while. Here was one of them. Look at this thing. Asteroid, blah, 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 approaching dangerously towards Earth, may hit our planet. Yikes, that's alarming, until you read the next paragraph that says, do not worry, as the asteroid will not hit the Earth and we are safe. Goodness great. What, you call that reporting? What on earth? So this happens all the time, of course, with these asteroids. It's all about clickbaiting and getting people in to read the article. And just don't be alarmed when you see all these stories about asteroids approaching Earth. Frankly, if you're not seeing it from somewhere like NASA or something official like Space Dave Live, then don't trust it. Was there anything else? There was one other thing of the fake news, wasn't there? I think it was another space. Oh yeah, that's right, this one. Let's just have a quick look at this one. I thought this was just a little bit on the nose, actually. So here's an article saying, Russian space junk could collide with experimental habitat. Well, that doesn't look too good either. It's kind of harks back to the one that we were talking about last week with SpaceX and the European Space Agency, until you realise that actually that experimental habitat was one of Bigelow's, actually, that we were just talking about before. This was an early version, a test version of one of their habitable space modules. But this was decommissioned quite a while ago. So this thing is actually space junk itself. So really, I thought that was kind of a little bit rude, saying that that Russian space junk could collide with our cool experimental habitat. Actually, that headline should have been, 2 pieces of space junk could collide with each other. I think that would have been a fairer way of reporting that one. So that's all I wanted to say about that. We are now up to 8 o'clock, so we have to quickly wrap things up. So a couple of last things I wanted to mention. One of them was a suggested link. Links in the show notes, of course. Oh, I've just had a horrible thought. Did I actually even upload the show notes? I might not have done. But no one's pointed it out. Do I even need to bother uploading the show notes if no one's pointing it out? Oh, look, I'm really sorry about that. Look, after the show tonight, I will go and upload the show notes, and the link is in the description, so go and have a look if you want to read about any of these things. But there was a suggested link from Jeff Bentley, who just sent that through, and it's a cool website where you can go and spot satellites that might be passing over your place. It's quite a nice visualization of it, so thank you very much for that, Jeff. And I just quickly wanted to mention a couple of films. Ad Astra, who's seen that? Do you want to comment on that? You better be quick if you want to comment on it. I was going to try and see it and do a little bit of a review of it for you, but I just didn't get time to go and see it, so maybe I'll get back to that. To be honest, it doesn't really look like a space movie as such. It kind of looks like just a movie that was set in space. But the other one, link in the show notes again, a movie called Lucy in the Sky. I don't know if you've heard about this one. I've got a link to the trailer, which is a movie which appears to be based on the story of Lisa Nowak. You remember that one? The astronaut, or astronaut as she was often called, the one, yeah, you remember, eh? It was the one where the astronaut sort of fell to pieces a little bit after she came back to Earth and drove across the United States wearing nappies in order to kidnap a love rival. So a bit of a sad story, really, the whole thing, and an interesting topic of a movie, really. But it's relevant, so the link is in the show notes there. So we need to wrap up our competition. How are we looking for the competition, Jess? Are we ready to do that? Okay, let's do that. So remember, our competition was about should New Zealand be giving away money to the Americans. Casey, would you like to do the honours tonight and pull out a name from the astronaut helmet? You can call it out if you like, or you can bring it up here. Oh, okay then. Like me, you'll be needing your glasses. Courtney Quinn. Courtney, congratulations, Courtney. You have won the prize. Well done. So you have won that book, and we will get that in the mail out to you. So what you need to do is you need to send us a private message or contact us somehow. There's some contact options there on the spacecentre.nz/live, so we will know where to post it to. And as always, if anyone wins a prize that they don't actually want, please feel free to donate it back to us, and we will give it to a worthy cause. While I think about that, Casey, you donated us that rover, didn't you? The Mars rover. Before you go, make sure we go down the back, and I'll show you exactly where it is in our Lego display down the back, because it's really cool. So that is a competition. I think that is about wrapping everything up. Was there anything else in the chat that we wanted to talk about? No, we're happy with that? Okay, so let me just have a quick look in here and say thank you very much, everyone. I will try my best to get back through the chat and answer any other questions that we haven't tackled. So Niels is saying you like when I say what on earth when he talks about space and other planets. Okay then, so look, with that, thank you much everyone. Thank you very much everyone. Love having you guys on board. It's awesome seeing all the interaction and everything like that. Remember, no show next week. It's the school holidays, by the way, next week. If you want to come and see us at the Space Centre, we are open every day of the school holidays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We would love to see you here. If you are someone who watches the show, make sure you come and announce yourself, and we can have a little bit of a chat about it when you come and see us. But I think that is all we really need to say. So with that, I will say thank you again, everyone. Thanks to our live audience out here. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Mum, for keeping an eye on all the chat and everything. And we will see you all again back here, same time, 2 weeks from now. Bye-bye, everyone.